Chris Wallace here, advisor to men, to those willing to widen their perspective, bringing you another message of power and love in service of meaning and freedom. Give me a few moments of your time. I'm going to share something I think that you're going to appreciate. Something that we could call human training. It's an area of living most men pay very little attention to, when the reality is that the payoffs are darn good. In fact, if you could invest money at these rates of returns, you'd pour everything you have into such a market, because we're talking about human capital, something more precious than gold. Let me start with something I read recently. The average child undergoes something like 4,000 inductions per year. That means he or she is told what to do in varying degrees 10 or 15 times per day. And it's all so that they'll pick up the general message to A, stay alive at all costs. Don't die on my watch. And B, become socialized within the tribe. And that latter part has a secondary benefit in that the person who is well accepted by the tribe can usually count in some degree on the tribe also helping them stay alive. And being socialized also helps to not diminish your parents' standing amongst their peers as well. Don't bring shame on the family. You've heard it said before. Just that it means by age 20 or so, you've been told what to do maybe 100,000 times. Think about that. Now, place those 100,000 inductions in the context of a growing organism, say a human. What do you think happens to them? If you figured out that they'd be changed by this, I think you'd be right. The question is how? Well, we all arrive here with potentials and possibilities intact. There's clear differences between you and others, and those are present right at the start. You ask any parent that has more than 2 kids and you say, well, what's the same about your children? They'll start telling you what's different. You had different activity levels, biological rhythms, sensitivities, reactions, intensities, adaptability, persistence, distractibility, mood, approach, and withdrawal tendencies. These are all different among us. Each one of us an individual, albeit with similar organic and neurobiological foundations, but no two of us are alike. Onto that stock substrate comes the afterbuild of those 100,000 commands. The brain makes room for them, allotting precious space in the frontal cortices and other areas concerned with language. And when you get as an organism which ordinarily communicates with itself by feelings and flashes of insight, overlaid by language, interpretation, and judgment, the best of both worlds, right? It's just that often those 100,000 commands were given in such a way that it was implied that should they not be followed explicitly, you were either defective or worse, doomed. A child can get the impression that they may be abandoned, or as I like to put it, left at the edge of the village to the elements and the animals. Think that's exaggerating? Ha! I heard Randy Thorhill tell 100 years ago the #1 killer of children was infectious disease. The #2 killer, infanticide. So plenty to be concerned about. And this is the same for you, it's the same for me, and it's the same for that person out there. The stock part of you is your essence. It was decided and bestowed upon you by heavens of infinite wisdom, I like to say. You can call it by God, nature, the universe, however you like. An afterbuild of 100K commands was an expedient necessity installed using fancy pants language, usually under the threat and reward parenting system, which says, do as I say and I'll tolerate you, ignore me at your peril. Well, by adulthood, we've heard well enough about what we're doing wrong. In fact, we may become inured to what can seem like incessant feedback from our environment, which only seems to confirm that somehow we're a little defective for not getting it a little earlier. What this means for you and me is to understand that many of us don't take criticism very well. You can get good at it, no doubt about it. That's true. I train a few methods on how to do this in the shame course. And once you're aware that you don't take feedback very well, you can sort of watch for opportunities to recognize criticism and then prepare for it in advance so you know how to handle it. Anyways, now you know. All of this is a function of the PhD, the paradox of human development. You and I are born helpless and often wind up with rank amateurs for safekeeping. And it's the same for most of us. Definitely the born helpless part, and in context, the rank amateurs part. So let me ask you something. You ever catch flies? I have. I use those sticky rolls, that sticky goo, and I hang them in my garage in my mudroom. Every strip I put up is filled up by summer's end. And I remember hearing an expression, probably a butchered maxim of some kind, but nevertheless, it's something like, you catch more flies with honey than you do a fly swatter or fly paper, words to that effect. Remember that one? I wouldn't waste good honey on a fly, but I think you get the meaning. The question is this one. We've accumulated 100,000 criticisms. And so I ask you, just how much praise? If you compared the ratio, what would that look like? If you were preferred 4,000 inductions per year telling you what to do, how many of those would you see as run of the mill? How many would be corrections? Comparatively, how many were or are encouragement? Some folks I speak to don't remember any. Sad ass mother situation that is. Some folks tell me they were offered some kind of reinforcement, but it was so blatantly phony and self-serving as to negate any benefit. You see, even as kids, we're not as stupid as we look. Every one of us is born with a sense of justice intact within us. And we often know when something is bullshit, especially early in life. Even if you were encouraged, and I hope you were, what's the ratio of encouragement to criticism? Some of us will remember only a handful of times where we were praised or encouraged against a backdrop of 100,000 inductions to do this or do that because you should, would, could, what if only, and but. So let me ask you something else. What if you decided that with you going forward, things are going to be different? What if you did that? What if instead of sending out into the world the fears passed along by your original caregivers, you are going to seize your reserves of love and power and use them your way? What if you did that? I have a suggestion for you. This is what you do. You demand that under your roof, we're going to use positive reinforcement and encouragement and praise and reward. You can set that tone. We won't just use it. We'll make it a rule to never pass up an opportunity to tell somebody what they're doing right. And how do you manage this? Well, by showing them. You demonstrate your love and power in two parts. First is by making your expectations to each other crystal clear. Let me give you a simple example. Anybody can imagine this. You say, folks, it would make my heart sing if we cleaned up after ourselves in the sink. I know we won't always do it, that sometimes something will come up, but I know we could all try. And I'm not looking for perfection. Would you do that for me? Then you watch. Later, you find a clean sink. You say, who cleaned the sink? Somebody admits it. You say, have I told you how much I appreciate you today? And now you can lay it on thick about their consideration. What a fine example they are. What a great kid, partner, roommate they are. How have I been so blessed to have you in my life? You say while looking skyward at the gods, raising your hands in thanks at your good fortune. Make your praise unforgettable, especially at first. And you do this over and over with all the good that people do. I tell you what, come back in 6 months and tell me what happens. Do it honestly, do it diligently, and stick with the change that you want to see in your world. Now you could say, well, people should just clean up after themselves. It's common courtesy. And of course, you'd be right and you'd be wrong. Right in that this is a decent ideal, at least concede that. But the idea that people should do things is part and parcel of the 100,000 commands that they have been brainwashed since childhood. There's nothing uplifting about following orders blindly unless you're at war, in which case survival is your main priority. Remember, sociability and survival. See where I'm getting with that? So a couple of more things. Control is one of the greatest differentiators to stress. When we have a say in things, We're empowered. I can handle suffering, and you can handle suffering if we know that in advance and have some control over it. So keep that in mind. There's something else. You punish a child or even an adult over something to teach them a lesson, you can forget about impacting their values. You're kidding yourself. There's no moral internalization likely with punishment. Aversion works to teach avoidance, but rarely teaches people to do the right thing. That's why the second meditation in my shame course shows you stuff like autonomy support. Why would any of this be different with an adult, a coworker, a friend, a spouse, as it is with a child? And that's just it. There's no difference at all. So let me ask you another question. What kind of man would you need to become to use praise on everyone? Here's another. What would happen if you did? And what would happen if you got really, really good at it? Would that change the lives of those around you? But a bigger question is this: how would it change you? What if a guy was to say to his slim woman how much he appreciates her naked body every single day? And that he loves the way she keeps herself healthy? What if he was poetic about it? Would it mean anything to her that he was so inspired by her, or that he wrote or sang or whatever else to show his appreciation? A guy has his missus come out of the shower, and maybe from the other room he calls out, "Woman, let me see you in that towel." What if she prances, towel turbaned on her head, the way women do to dry their hair, and butt naked? Imagine if she twirled around in the room saying, "You want to see my towel? Here it is." And off she went. You didn't even notice the towel. She'd be such a tease. What if you did that for 15 years by telling her she looks fantastic every single day? Because she does. What if you did that? What if you knew the secret? Maybe it would be her hips. What do you think happens to you as a man? What do you think happens with a man who tells his woman that you're in love with her hips, that her hips turn your head, that these hips of yours make my heart skip a beat, and you mention it to her every day, not once, not twice, but many times, with enthusiasm? See, a man like that, he doesn't need to sell it because he means every word. Would you guess that she might keep those hips prominently displayed against her slim waist to keep his interest? Because that's what happens. And at home, I tell Mrs. what a fantastic mother she is. When I make the kids breakfast and she sometimes makes their school lunches because she didn't have time the night before, I sing her praises. I tell her how lucky the kids are to have her, what an enchanted life they live. And so she enchants my children even more. It's Ralph the Elf month at my house. She's amazing. Yesterday, Ralph was hanging from the laundry room light fixture in a hammock made out of one of those pandemic masks, decorated with a note. Kids find it in the morning, they eat it up, squealing with delight. And one of them finds the elf. "Don't touch it," they say. Today, Ralph the Elf is hidden in a plain sight within a Christmas decoration on the wall. Completely missed it until the boy showed it to me. I tell Mrs. she's the most creative mother I know, that she's the most. A few days ago, I was tasting her latest soup. I mentioned that she's the best soup maker I've ever met. And then I kid her and I say, I'm so glad I taught her how to make soup, that she has long ago far surpassed the teacher, and that she may just be the best damn soup maker I've ever encountered in my long life, or that I will ever know, despite my wide travels when it comes to soup. She has no equals. I don't fuck around. I need to see the awe in everybody. Go big or stay home is not always necessary, though. I tell each person in my household what they do right all day long, and it takes a little practice, and I'm not perfect at it, not by far, but I do it anyways. And I remind myself to see what is right about people and not what is not. And you know what happens? I'll let you figure that out. because it is I who gets paid far more for this, without question. This is using your reserves of power and love in service of yourself and others to find meaning and freedom. I see it in their faces, Mrs., the kids, and others. They radiate with love and appreciation, with connection. They light up. And consequently, their joy acts as a salve for my soul, because that's how humans are made. It's funny how that works. It has to do with how we exist in each other. We can occupy that space with force, with apathy, or as I suggest, with power and love. I swear I get more from this than they do, but who knows? If you do this, you might just be there at the right time when someone you love really needs to hear your positive words. They'll never forget it. Context is everything. You could do this. You could really do this the way that only men can. Women can do it too, but they get a little sidetracked. So lead. You hold the reserves of love and power. You can set the tone in your home and relationship with praise and reward, but will you? If you think you can't, I can help you. But I have faith in you. I know that you can, because I believe in you. Thank you for listening. Once again, Chris Wallace, Advisor to Men. Please find me at advisortomen.com and the Board of Directors Masterminds, and stand with other men in mutual support of each other's quest to live better lives. If this helps you, subscribe, leave a comment, share it if you like. Until next time, power and love. Stay true and free.